everyone who's attending this live webinar on Depression Decoded. My name is Mugdha Pradhan. I'm a functional nutritionist. I'm the founder of iThrive. And once a month, we do these knowledge-based webinars. We did one on diabetes decoded. We did one on weight loss decoded. We're doing today's on depression decoded, with the intention and the purpose of sharing the knowledge that we have about how we treat different diseases. Often what we found in our work is when patients come to us, when clients come to us, they've been misinformed by conventional mainstream medicine, pharmaceutical companies, marketing, and they don't even understand the root of what they're really experiencing, the symptoms they're experiencing. So our attempt with these webinars, as often as we can do them, is to demystify whether it's physical health or whether it's mental health, to just like really demystify things that are around health, and make it as simple as possible for you to really decode your own health and understand what it means. We are going to be talking about depression today in our series of Health Decoded. And when I say depression decoded, basically what we're going to do is understand what depression really is, what are the symptoms, how different people experience it differently. And we're going to talk about whether it can really be treated, what are the kind of, what's the kind of work we've done, what kind of reversals we've seen along with other diseases that we work with. Just going to go in that. It's an exploratory, open discussion, and please put in your questions in the chat. I would really love to hear your thoughts as we go through this presentation. So see, like I said, the goal of this entire series is to spread and disseminate knowledge that really comes from a desire to create healthier, happier, lifestyle disease-free planet communities across the planet every single day. And often what I found in my work, what the team finds when they work with clients, is this real knowledge is never available. Okay, so let's get started. Why are we even talking about depression, right? Why do we pick the different topics that we talk about? We spoke about weight loss, we spoke about diabetes in the past, we've spoken about heart health in the past. Why am I discussing depression today? Why is it that something that's a mental health issue is being offered up for a discussion in a 1-hour webinar? Well, if you can see from the slides, right? India, this table actually is even before COVID. India was amongst some of the worst hit countries by depression. And what we saw through the pandemic is that there was an increased spike in anxiety and depression. Both younger adults were actually more likely to report symptoms of anxiety and depressive disorders during the pandemic. It triggered a sharp rise in cases of depression and anxiety. Women, youth, so younger humans and women were the most affected. So while India was already high on the depression score, the pandemic just made it worse. And this is what we're seeing even in our work. More and more people are coming to us asking for solution for mental health issues, right? Yes, physical health is still a problem. India is still the diabetes capital of the world. Soon, with all the number of heart attacks that are happening, India is leading in terms of heart attack related deaths as well. But mental health is something that cannot be ignored. And that's why it's important to talk about this. Because if your mind is not at the right place, if your if the mental makeup is not there in the right framework, even taking care of your physical health is going to become a problem. And then it just becomes a vicious circle. Like, physical health can suffer, and then your mental health goes down. As your mental health worsens, your physical health starts suffering even more, and then you just go into this loop of like just getting worse and worse on a day-to-day basis. That's why we're talking about depression, because in that state of depression, very rarely do people actually have the motivation to do something for themselves, to like actually change their life. Okay. This is again my perspective based on the work I've been doing, based on all the books that I read, all the really emerging, absolutely amazing psychologists that are there abroad, not so many in India. And what I've come to understand, that depression is largely misunderstood, right? Like, most people assume depression is just this feeling of sadness, just this feeling of like, it's just a phase and it'll come and go. And people think it's like mood swings. Sometimes people think someone's making up this, right? Like someone's feeling depressed and showing the world that they're depressed just because they want some attention. But it's very, very largely misunderstood phenomena. What is depression really? It's basically a symptom. Okay, depression is nothing but a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system, and I'll explain what a dysregulated nervous system is all about also, right? But like most mental health conditions, whether it is anxiety, whether it is to a degree like hypervigilance, or also conditions where you have like OCD or whatever it is, right? A lot of these mental health conditions are actually an outcome of a dysregulated nervous system. They are a symptom of a nervous system that is not functioning well. They are not the entirety of the disease itself. For example, when someone comes to us and tells us that they have diabetes, what that means is they have elevated blood sugar levels. And what does that tell us? That their body is not regulating their blood sugar properly, because either they have insulin resistance, or they don't have the nutrients that are needed for processing that blood sugar, or something else is happening. But that diabetes they come to us as with just a symptom. Similarly, depression is a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system. And what do I mean by a dysregulated nervous system? Okay, if you look at this slide here, this is a quick snapshot of what is really happening inside our body when we experience trauma. Now, if you see these two black lines right here on the top, these two black lines and this grey, nice, gentle, smooth ebb and flow that's happening is basically how we are actually supposed to respond to stressors in life. So you're here, you're feeling bored, there's no challenge, and then you pick up a new challenge. Either you start at a new job, you start trying to learn a new skill, you get into a new relationship or something like that. Like out of choice, you say, okay, I really want to do something more, I want to grow. You pick up a new challenge, and it creates a sufficient degree of stress for you to kind of go to an optimal state of both cognitive and physical flow. You learn from that challenge, you evolve and you grow and adapt, and from there you kind of have a rest and recovery period. From that rest and recovery period, you have a new challenge that comes, you again adapt, you learn, grow, adapt and evolve, and then again you have a rest and recovery period. This is how normally we are supposed to respond to stress, okay? Even our ancestors, our hunter-gatherer forefathers, when they went hunting, right, and when they were surprised by a tiger hiding in the bushes, they would have had a stress response to the tiger, right? They would have either run away, or if they were together, they would have fought the tiger, they would have done something there, and after escaping that tiger, they would have eventually gone back to their caves or their tribe or their village, wherever they are, and then they would have, like, you know, had moments to kind of just debrief from that episode, talk to each other that, oh, there was a tiger here and never go here again, and then maybe make some cave paintings of the hunt and everything, relax, sleep, wake up the next day knowing now, okay, this is the area that we'll not go for a hunt because this is a tiger's territory. That is how we are supposed to learn from stressors and learn from different challenges in life. What happens though is, often as little children, as young adults, as pre-teens, and even as adults, we sometimes experience events that are so traumatic, okay? Traumatic as in they're so painful, they cause so much hurt, they cause so much pain, they cause so much sadness and so much grief. Events that you did not choose, but mostly happened to you because of someone else's intervention, okay? That's usually what trauma is. And that traumatic event actually comes in and short circuits the entire stress response mechanism. So instead of you going through life with this gentle ebb and flow, you have this big event that comes and, you know, it completely changes your stress response. Now, what happens here is a lot of people actually, because of the traumatic event, they either get in a on response mode where they're like always looking for the next threat, they're really worried, they're anxious, they're hypervigilant, they can never rest, they are always worried that something bad is going to happen. Very restless, will have a lot of emotional flooding, will never be at peace, will never be calm. That is one state that someone can go to, especially after a traumatic event. Happens to a lot of people because the nervous system got hijacked, right? Because the entire mechanism of dealing with stress got hijacked by this trauma. So it's gone into a short circuit kind of a mode. Again, it's doing that to protect you from further trauma, further hurt and further pain. So it's always scanning your environment to see, okay, where else is the next danger coming from? Now, a lot of people can stay stuck in this mode without even realizing it. But often what happens is this mode is very energy intensive, because if you're always hyper vigilant, if you're always scanning for threats, you're actually consuming a lot of energy. And often after being stuck in this mode for too long, there is a crash and people go into this mode. This mode is where you get stuck in the off, okay? Like you just don't want to react to life, you don't want to interact with life, you don't want to talk to anyone, you don't want to do anything, you just want to like just be. And depression is something that happens in this state of being. When you are like, you know, your emotional nervous system has been dysregulated for so long, you're just exhausted, you're just tired. You go into this state where, and there are of course different things that could happen in this off mode, where it could just be lethargy, it could just be like fatigue, it could be disorientation. The most extreme of that is actual depression. Now, people think depression is somebody just feeling sad, someone who's just crying, someone who's experiencing grief. I am someone who has actually survived many bouts of depression, and I work with people who actually undergo depression. And I'm telling you, depression is not just sadness or grief. Actually, in that extreme depressed state, you don't even feel anything. There is nothing, there is no color, there is no sound, there is no emotion, there is absolutely nothing. There is nothing that's even reaching your senses. You feel like you're in this just dark cloud, and all like you're just alone in this absolute dark cloud. There is nothing around you. You can't feel another human being. No one is connecting with you, and you're just alone, right? It's extreme loneliness without the perception of anything around you. That's how dark depression gets. For a lot of people, that state of absolute darkness feels like the end of life. They don't even want to continue from there. That's when suicide ideation and like, you know, you just want to end your existence. If there is nothing left in your existence, if it's just a dark void of nothingness, you don't even want to live, okay? So it gets that bad in true blue depression. But it's a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system where trauma caused hypervigilance, caused fear, caused anxiety for so long that now you're just exhausted and you don't want to interact with life at all. That is what happens in depression. Okay, what are the signs and symptoms of this happening? You'll have difficulty concentrating. There will be changes in appetite, there will be changes in weight, absolutely no intrinsic motivation to do work. There will be a lot of despair, like you just can't see hope in the world. Optimism would just vanish. Loss of interest in life, absolutely no energy. You'll feel numb. You'll really feel numb in the sense you just can't feel anything, right? And that's the worst thing that can happen to a human being, because as human beings, we are designed to feel and experience life and like, you know, just go through life. In fact, Avinash and me, we do a podcast on embracing the human experience where we actually speak of what does it mean to embrace the entirety of the human experience. But anyway, these are some of the symptoms of what really happens when someone is experiencing depression, right? Your emotions are mostly in this zone. You're experiencing sadness and anxiety and guilt. When you're feeling, there is a point of time when you can't even feel these emotions. Thoughts are often like very self-critical. You'll have that inner critic running through your head all the time. You won't be able to make decisions. There'll be a lot of confusion, thoughts of ending your life because you wouldn't want to live like this. Physically, there would be chronic fatigue. You'll feel very tired. There'll be a lack of energy. Either you can't sleep well. That's usually when that system is still in on mode. When the system goes into off mode, you'll actually sleep a lot. Like you'll just not want to get out of bed. Loss of motivation. Substance abuse begins, right? Because intrinsically, if you're not feeling anything, you want to kind of just do something to feel. So often people resort to both legal and illegal drugs. Alcohol becomes something that people start abusing. Externally from society, we just start withdrawing. We don't want to interact with people because we are like sitting in this dark cloud and we don't want to go even talk to other people. we start neglecting our day-to-day responsibilities, including self-care. Like even taking care of yourself feels like something you don't want to do. And that's why there are often changes in personal appearance. Okay? And the funny thing is, until early this year, for I don't know how many, I think from the 1950s, this theory had started that depression is a result of a chemical imbalance in the brain. Because of serotonin levels going haywire is why a person feels depressed. And an entire drug category was built on this theory. This drug category is called as SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. SSRIs are the most commonly prescribed drug both in the US and in India. You go to a psychiatrist and you say, hey, I'm feeling like this. The psychiatrist's first response usually is to give you a prescription for an SSRI. I was given an SSRI. That time, even before the research came in, like what we are going to talk about in the next slide, even then I realized this is not helping me at all because this is making me feel worse. So that entire market of all these antidepressant drugs was built on this one theory that there is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and because of that someone is experiencing depression. This year, July 2022, thankfully for us, that theory was debunked. A lot of research papers came, a deep research was done, and the serotonin hypothesis itself was completely dismissed. I mean, we can share the research paper if someone wants to read, or you can just Google for it, but surveys indicated that people believed so low serotonin levels and chemical imbalance actually caused that. Mic ke paas? Okay, sorry, I didn't know my voice is not coming off. But they looked at peer-reviewed papers, they looked at empirical data for many years, and what they discovered was this theory that the serotonin imbalance is causing depression was not substantiated at all empirically. Okay, it completely debunked that entire philosophy and entire hypothesis that serotonin depletion was causing depression. There was this, I mean, even now doctors are still prescribing antidepressants, but antidepressants do not cure depression. It's like, you know, your diabetes pill is never going to cure your diabetes. You could be taking metformin all your life and your diabetes is not going to get cured. You could be taking BP medicines all your life and your BP is not going to get reversed, right? Like you're always going to have high BP. It's the same thing. Antidepressants do not cure depression. It is a myth. It is brilliant marketing by pharmaceutical companies. Look at that headline, pharma overpromise on antidepressants, but none of the antidepressants actually cured depression. All that some of them were successful in doing is making people feel even number and like just become more robotic. And I think to me, right, what I feel like even before we get into the root causes of depression, honestly, I think at times, like there have been points of time in my life when I felt so low, like that absolute void, that blackness that I described where nothing existed, nothing mattered and I was the only person there. Those points in time, which psychiatrists and psychologists would call clinical depression and then would get very scared and put me on all sorts of drugs, those points of time have actually been the points where I've made pivotal changes. From there, from the acknowledgement that like life was miserable and everything was sucky, I looked at what is it I would need to create to make life a happier existence for myself, right? So I honestly think if we are given the right perspective, if we are taught how to deal with these spaces where our nervous system is telling us, okay, just shut down for now, calm down, examine, introspect, and then come back on top. If we use these spaces that our own life creates for us, we'll actually end up creating a better life for us. Not that anyone should go through depression. I'm just saying that for those of us who experience it, it can be a gift. It can be a gift to remodel and recreate our life. Okay? Now going to more from the perspective of what really causes depression. We spoke of how it was a nervous system dysregulation that really triggered that off effect. But does that just happen randomly, or is there any way to control that, right? So what we found in our work is that deficiencies, like someone who has low vitamin D levels, someone who doesn't have enough vitamin B complex, someone who might have like a B12 deficiency or very high levels of homocysteine, or even if they don't have enough protein going into their body or enough saturated fat or omega-3 fatty, like so many nutrients are required for our brain and our body to function well. Now, if we end up becoming deficient in any of these nutrients, there's a very high possibility that your brain's ability to create all the neurotransmitters that are needed might be impaired, and thereby it might affect your mood. Hormonal imbalances, again, there's this hormone called DHEA, which is the youth hormone. Because of the toxins in the environment, because of the kind of infections that we experience, because of all the stressors that we experience, the level of DHA actually has been declining over years. Like men, women, everywhere it's been lower. And lower DHA levels are actually correlated with lower moods, more depressive tendencies. That's one. Women, when they go through menopause, the entire estrogen progesterone imbalance that's happening, that also impacts mood. Men who have low testosterone levels actually do have more depressive tendencies, right? So if your hormones are out of whack, if they're not in the right place, it can create depressive tendencies and a possibility of going into full-blown real depression. Infections, whether it's gut infections or whether it's actually other chronic infections, maybe somewhere in your bloodstream you have an Epstein-Barr virus, or in your joints there is like a Klebsiella, or in your gut you have H. pylori or something, right? Like maybe you have a bacterial, viral, fungal, chronic infection. Any of these infections, guys, you won't believe me, but like these microbes are really, really powerful, right? These pathogens are really powerful. In fact, 2020 and until now, SARS-CoV-2, one tiny virus, became very, very famous, more famous than any other living thing on this planet. And a lot of these microbes actually exert influence on our mental state, right? Like how our state of mind can get impacted by the microbiome that we have. So if you have too many of the bad guys, they can actually, through their toxins, through their growth, create states of minds where you don't feel at your optimal level, because you're human in the end. You can't really have these pathogens feeding off you. Toxins, chemicals in air, chemicals in water, chemicals in our food. Again, there are lots of documented studies on how different toxins can actually alter the state of mind. Fluoride, fluorine, all of these things also can go and disrupt your endocrine glands, which are the glands that produce hormones. And when these endocrine glands get disrupted, your hormones can go out of balance, right? So there are many ways in which chemicals from the environment actually can impact your health, and these poisons can create a poisoned state of mind inside you, and you won't even know that this is happening because of the toxins that are coming in. Mental and emotional stress, of course, like the relationships you're in, the kind of work you do, the quality of life, the amount of money you're making, you know, your own health, your family's health, your children's health. So all of these things are contributed to mental and emotional stress, and if not dealt with correctly, if you don't have the right tools to kind of deal with whatever challenges and stressors come to you psychologically or emotionally, this can also then start resulting in depressive tendencies and depression. Not getting sleep is one of the most restorative free tools that we have been gifted with. Most of us don't understand how important sleep is for our mind to be at peace, okay? So we compromise on sleep, especially like I see like even the younger kids who sometimes come and join Thrive until they start focusing on their health. They'll have very poor sleep patterns and like they'll be fatigued. So a lot of us do that. We don't understand how important it is like to get really good, clean 8 hours, 7 hours of sleep. So if you're not getting good sleep consistently, it can impact how your brain works and thereby cause depression. Inflammation, what is inflammation? Inflammation is basically maybe you're eating food that is bad for your body, like processed food, Maggi and pizzas and chips and biscuits. Maybe you're eating, maybe like you have a chronic infection, or maybe you have something like a organ dysfunction, your liver is not working well, or too many toxins in your body. Any of these things can trigger inflammation inside. And that inflammatory state, right, is a state where like this constant fires that your body has to deal with inside your system. When your body has to deal with that, so much energy goes into dealing with that inflammation that there's nothing left to kind of help your mind calm down and stabilize. In fact, inflammation also can trigger poor sleep, and in sleep I want to add this, like there's this process of glial pruning. There is this fluid that actually runs through your brain when you sleep. It's literally like washing machine happening inside your brain. It takes away a lot of toxins and things that might have accumulated in that cerebrospinal fluid, and it clears it up. So sleep is like super important. Genetics, again, see, we've seen sometimes people who have this particular gene mutation called as the MTHFR, right? It's an enzyme that's required in our body to process B vitamins and to do something called as methylation. Some people, some humans have a faulty MTHFR gene. When that happens, how your B complex nutrients are processed doesn't really work well. Because of that, you end up with deficiencies and very high homocysteine levels. And then there's a big correlation between high homocysteine, low B complex and mood itself. So if you have genetic issues also, it can actually, so it's a physical thing and you think you have a mental health issue, right? EMF exposure is basically, like now with 5G coming, it's actually getting a little scarier, but the more we are exposed to cell phone towers, or if you're sleeping with phones next to our heads in the night, if you're sleeping with Wi-Fi on, most of us are spending so much time like wearing all these AirPods, right, where like you don't even have wired headphones anymore. This kind of EMF exposure can interfere with brain waves, and that interference with the brain wave can change how you're feeling. Secondly, if you have a lot of blue light exposure, right, blue light actually changes how dopamine is released in your brain, and even that can cause low mood swings. So there are many root causes of what causes depression. The goal is to really figure out what it is, right? So the question, like why we are doing this session, is to share this knowledge that there are so many root causes and the fact that there is a way out, right? Because often people who are given a depression diagnosis think that they have to be dependent on antidepressants for the rest of their life. That is not true at all. There is a way out. How do you do that? You identify the root cause. You find out which of those earlier causes I spoke of could be at the root of your depression. You then start working with a personalized treatment plan, right? Whether it's supplements, whether it's food, whether it's lifestyle changes like sleep patterns and sunlight exposure and water consumption. You then you can't just say that, oh, this one particular pill is going to cure my depression, or you can't just say that this diet is going to cure the depression, right? You have to look at yourself as a holistic being. You have to look at integrating so many different approaches into your recovery journey, and that's when recovery happens. And this last thing that I've said, right, about community, such a big role in helping you deal with your depression, because you know what we have inside our bodies as a natural resilience mechanism. So every time we get stressed, every time something happens and we release all these stress hormones, cortisol and all of that, our body is prepping for a stress response. Simultaneously, your heart is releasing a hormone called as oxytocin. What is oxytocin? Oxytocin is the hormone of bonding. Oxytocin is released between a mother and a child as soon as the child is born. Oxytocin is released when you cuddle. Oxytocin is released when you hug someone. Oxytocin is also released when you actually connect with another human being, even through verbal communication. So in our stress response mechanism, we have our body's natural resilience system, which is releasing this beautiful hormone called oxytocin, which is designed to help you connect with another human being. So while you do all of this, identify the root cause, work on solutions, if you use your body's ability, like you really use that, the innate human tendency to connect, and you find a community, you find people that you can talk to, that sense of loneliness goes, right? Like even addictions are an outcome of loneliness. The biggest cure for addiction is connectedness. So finding a community, connecting with a community, finding people you can be vulnerable with, talk to them, goes a long way in helping you heal from depression itself. Okay, but since we practice functional nutrition, since I'm a nutritionist by profession and the company is entirely run on the work we do around nutrition, I just wanted to add a little slide on this. See, our brain needs a lot of energy to work. In fact, there's someone had told me that when these chess tournaments happen and this intense, like, these chess grandmasters are playing with each other, they lose nearly 4 to 5 kgs of body weight because the brain is consuming so much energy at that time. But our brain needs a lot of energy to work properly, and it needs raw materials to create these neurotransmitters. So while the serotonin deficiency theory has been debunked, our brain still makes these neurotransmitters, right? Dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin also is made sometimes. So these neurotransmitters are the ones that send the signal to the rest of your body, and they're the ones that create a sense of feeling inside you. Now if you don't have the raw material to make these neurotransmitters coming from your food, which is like proteins and B complex and zinc and all the amino acids and omega-3 fatty acid, it's going to be hard for your brain to make these, and then that deficiency is going to reflect in how you're feeling. Your brain won't get what it needs, and there was one study that showed that eating nutrient-sparse processed foods, right, like that, a packet of Maggi really has no nutrition. It might have like a lot of taste makers added to make you feel very happy after you eat it, but there is no nutrition. Now if somebody's diet is like filled with foods like that, like Maggi and pizza and Coke and all of that, there is no nutrient density coming from that food. And because of the deficiencies that build up because of eating that kind of food, your chances of getting depressed go up by as much as 60%. 60%. Can you imagine that? That's the impact diet alone can have on your mind. Okay, which are the nutrients linked to brain health? Protein, priority number 1. Saturated fat. So which kind of protein? I recommend animal protein a lot because it's the best kind of protein. So eggs and red meat and fish and prawns and chicken. Saturated fat, ghee, butter, coconut oil, all of them are really great. Omega-3 fatty acids usually come from seafood. B vitamins. Most diets are deficient in B vitamins, so we recommend supplementing with B vitamins. I also take B vitamin supplement every day. I take vitamin D also every day. Iodine, vitamin D is called like the happiness, sunshine vitamin, right? It really is that. It has a big impact on the brain. Iodine is something that's required for your thyroid to function well, and often iodine deficiencies can cause a thyroid dysfunction, which then can cause depressive tendencies. Zinc is required for immune system to work well. Now these are the nutrients that you really need on a daily basis: selenium, chromium, magnesium, tryptophan. But I understand this is not a nutrition masterclass, so I don't expect anyone to remember this. When you actually, if you do choose to get your blood work done and see that okay, there are deficiencies of these, then you will be able to understand more in a personalized way. Achha, my body needs more of these nutrients, and here is what I need to do to take them. Okay, but apart from like those, these are things that you can just do from tomorrow morning. As soon as you wake up, assuming you're not waking up like me at 4:30 and 5 a.m., but like if you're waking up maybe closer to sunrise, as soon as you wake up, within the first 15 minutes, instead of checking your phone, go outside and get sunlight. That early morning sun on your eyes, that early morning sun that goes through into your pineal gland, changes your brain's biochemistry and your brain's neural waves also. So depression is often linked with darkness. Light is the antidote for that. Okay, so go get as much sunlight as possible. Ask for help. I spoke of how oxytocin and the hormone of connectedness is like also another antidote for depression. So start connecting with people. Move. And it's easy for me to say move, but I know how immobilizing depression is. You just don't want to do anything. You don't want to get out of bed. And because of that, movement is also one of the antidotes for depression, right? So you can do yoga, you can do running, you can do dance, you can do whatever you want, but move, because movement is through what energy starts coming back into the body. Express yourself. Someone, I think I'd seen some movie that you can't really be a great artist or a great creator or a singer unless you experience deep trauma and us dard se gaane aate, kind of a thing, right? So actually when you're in this place, right, where you're feeling so low, start giving a voice to those feelings. Start giving a voice to however you're feeling. Through that voice, you will see actually some kind of art form evolves through it, right? So express yourself. You can paint, you can draw, you can do mandalas, you can write about it, you can start creating podcasts about your journey, you can literally do anything, but express it. Don't keep it inside. it's seeking expression, it's seeking a way out, right? So give it that space. Breath work, see, different kinds of breathing patterns work for different things. When it comes to depression, you're just in this state of like absolute meh, right? Like you don't want to do anything, you're like no energy. So there's this particular breath work, I call it fire breath because I don't want like the Baba Ramdev labels to come up. But otherwise it's normally called the Bhastrika Pranayam. So I don't know how many of you are aware of like these pranayams and breath works, but basically you're breathing from your belly and you're blowing out, right? So it's very intentional, sharp breathing. So you're breathing in and breathing out and your belly is involved in that. Now this kind of breath, right, like that forceful breath starts moving energy right from your central area, like your torso and all of these chakras, and it starts moving energy through your body. So if you're feeling in that phase where, okay, you're going down, you're just falling, this kind of breath work where you'll just start breathing forcefully and get your body to move that energy around will really help. Vagus nerve activation, now I can't show all the vagus nerve activation exercises here, but you can go check on YouTube, there are many. What is the vagus nerve? It's this nerve that runs through your body. Its biggest connection is between your gut and your brain, and it actually is involved in the parasympathetic nervous system. So when your nervous system is triggered and when you're like in a hyperactivated mode or when it's gone into the shutdown mode also, activating your vagus nerve will help you regulate your nervous system, like it will help you regulate your emotions. So you can look up a lot of exercises. One of my favorite ones is like and this I think like someone figured out this is what animals do. Like you see how dogs and like when dogs get territorial and they just start barking at each other, and once that fight is over, all of that excess energy, they'll just do this big dog shake, right, and that energy just goes off. It works really well for humans as well. So if you're feeling like just very low and like just there's not anything happening, just shake, like just shake all your limbs and like just be like that loose dog shaky thing. You'll feel your energy change, right? Like I did this for 10 seconds and I'm still feeling that movement kind of change my energy. Use earthly resources. What I mean by that is we have a lot of resources on this planet directly. We have the sun, which I spoke of. We have earth. So you go barefoot, stand directly on earth, not concrete, not these roads that are there, but you just stand directly on our planet, earth, ground yourself with that mud. And a lot of the despair that you're feeling, a lot of the hopelessness that you're feeling, a lot of the sadness that you're feeling, the earth will take it for you, okay? The earth has enough space for all of that and you can release it into the ground. It might sound a little woo-woo and not sciencey, but there is a lot of now research around grounding and how it creates significant markers of improved physiological change in our body. Water again is very good for emotional cleansing. So just stand under a shower, go for a swim. You'll actually feel more rejuvenated after spending time in water. Air again, like breath work, you can use air or you can just go to open spaces and just breathe. You'll start feeling more expansive and less contracted. Fire, not that you should be lighting things on fire, but it's a great tool. Like sometimes if you have a lot of angst against something, like someone hurt you, someone betrayed you, and that is what is causing all the trauma response and you're feeling hurt and pain, you could maybe just vent that out on paper, just write it on paper and burn that paper in a safe way. As you burn that, as the fire consumes all of those thoughts that you put down on paper, you will start feeling a little more lighter. It really works. Space again, like air, right? Like you just go out and start seeing how expansive space can be beyond the room that you're just locking yourself up in, and you will start feeling better. Journal every day, write down, because like expressing yourself, writing it down, you will start learning more about yourself. You'll start creating awareness about you, who you are, what are the things that are good for you, what are the things you want to say to, no to, who are the people who bring energy into your life, who are the people who drain you in life, what are the triggers that you have, your personal triggers, and through that you'll learn more about yourself, and therefore over time you'll actually become better and better at dealing with these low off modes. Things to avoid, guys, like all of you are part of this webinar. I'm sure there's something that you want to learn about depression itself. Alcohol is a nervous system depressant. It can make you feel good temporarily. It will numb all that you're feeling. It will give you this high, but it's destroying brain cells. Why would you want to destroy brain cells? Please do avoid it. Caffeine is something that will give you a temporary stimulation, and then after some time you'll feel a crash. So I would say that for people who have depressive tendencies, who are trying to figure out the root cause, trying to fix it for good, caffeine is something that you can keep away for a little while. Sugar, I spoke of, like how sugar can release dopamine, and it can kind of create this vicious cycle where you become dependent on. I didn't speak about it here, I spoke about it somewhere else. But when you consume sugar, it actually releases excess dopamine in the brain. It makes you feel good, but that crash also comes, and then you want more sugar immediately after that, right? So it can worsen any kind of inside inflammation also. Processed foods, like, it's not real food, guys. It's like people, these companies just take real food and then make something else out of it, and then you think it's food and you're eating it. It's got additives, it's got preservatives, it's got dyes and colors and flavor enhancers and taste makers and just so many chemicals that go into your body when you eat processed food. So things like even gluten containing, like I go back to pizza as my reference point. Really harmful. Please avoid it, right? So these things will help. Some additional points to remember, and you are going to get access to this recording, so you will have access to these slides as well. But choose meat and dairy that's antibiotic and hormone free, because you don't want those chemicals to go into your body. If you've been prescribed antibiotics for any particular reason, make sure you take a good quality probiotic along with it, so that you can kind of balance out whatever is happening because of the antibiotics. Refined sugars, grains, we spoke of. Get proper sleep, I spoke about it. Get your blood test done, right? Because if you remember that root cause slide I showed, there could be so many different root causes why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Why not then find out what's at the root of it, right? It could be a simple vitamin D deficiency. So get your blood test done and then understand what is really triggering this for you. If you're seeking therapy, I would recommend you looking for a trauma-informed therapist, because these therapists understand how to help another human being process trauma. If you go to a conventional psychologist or psychiatrist, you'll only be put on pills without any compassionate, authentic care. Okay, so that's my advice. Which blood test? Again, we can send you a more detailed list. But your CBC, you check your C-reactive protein, which will help you understand if there's inflammation. Vitamin D, vitamin B12 levels, HbA1c will give us a picture of what's really happening with your blood sugar. Homocysteine, this is a particular molecule that goes up if you have very high levels of deficiencies of B complex vitamins. Homocysteine also goes up if you have that MTHFR gene mutation, which I spoke about earlier. And fasting glucose, insulin, hemoglobin A1c, all of these again help us understand your blood sugar dysregulation and that pattern. So these are the tests that will really help. And I am going to turn, because I think there are a lot of questions there. It's time to sleep. Anytime after 9:30, before 10:30. Okay, so see, we are circadian, like we go with the diurnal rhythm, we go with sunrise, like our bodies are designed to work well with the sun rising, and we're supposed to go to sleep with the sunset. So ideally, even after like 7:30 p.m, I would recommend that you don't really have so many bright lights around you, and you keep the lights more of yellow lights, and start your wind down rituals. But by 9:30 you should be in bed, and a good 7 to 8 hours of sleep is what I would recommend for everyone. Best time to sleep. L-tryptophan, see, that's a supplement that I wouldn't recommend just taking it like that unless we know that you require L-tryptophan. So when it comes to supplementation with specific amino acids, it's better to be careful. Also, you can get tryptophan from food, even from bananas, right? So you could just have like a banana in the night and you'll get the tryptophan you need. Can untreated extreme depression lead to psychosis? I don't want the screen to be visible here because some people have sent direct questions. So I don't want their names to be visible. How can we do that? Yeah. Okay. So can untreated extreme depression lead to psychosis? Can you share something on antipsychotics and extreme weight gain? Yes, it can lead to psychosis, but not because how do I put this, right? So the psychosis is really coming from the entire fight or flight response getting activated from a lot of fear around the original trauma that you experienced, and that is what is really causing the psychotic experience. It's not the depression that's causing it. It's the original trauma that never was resolved that is creating this kind of a psychotic thing. And when it comes to psychosis, sometimes medications might be required at the initial phases just to calm the nervous system down. But there is a point of time when you can go off those medications, right? So blood tests become important here. Sometimes even if you have a lot of mold overload, right, like a lot of mycotoxins, there's this thing called as Stachybotrys. It's a toxic mold. People who have very high loads of Stachybotrys actually do have psychotic breakdowns and psychotic episodes and hallucinations and all of that. So it could be something like mold that is creating this for you, and you would think that it's your problem. Okay, but it can be worked upon. And yes, all of these mental health drugs actually do cause weight fluctuations. For some people, they cause extreme weight loss. For some people, they lead to weight gain. Now, the goal with all medications is to always be able to get off them. But you can't just stop taking these medications. You have to taper them off after you fix the underlying root causes. Okay. Want to know the treatment for this? Like I said, right, like best thing is to first like get your blood work done, see what is really going on. What might be the causes of not getting sleep every day till like almost 2 a.m.? So many causes, Chandan, so many. Could be something as simple as drinking coffee very late in the evening. So if you're a coffee tea drinker, I would say that avoid drinking it after 12. But then it could also be that you have too much blue light exposure, or you've not put in enough patterns for like sleep habits. You don't have a good sleep routine in place. We've actually written an article on sleep. Maybe we can send that along with the recording, and that should give you some answers. How to convince a person where you can see one going into depression? You can't, Prachi. So, when it comes to healing from any illness, all that you can do, like for another person, when you see somebody who's really ill in your life, you can't convince anyone. You can share knowledge, you can show authentic care, you can keep space for them for whatever they're experiencing, you can really be there for them. But if you try to tell them that, oh, you're so sick and you need to fix this right now, it's going to put them more into that nervous system dysregulation. So that's not something I would advise. But open their mind up to the fact that life could be different, right? How will you do that? Primarily through knowledge. Yes, we will be sharing the video. I think I answered that. My thoughts on anorexia. That's a completely different topic. So I'm not going to address anorexia now. A lot of good supplement companies put 10 times RDA of vitamins in B complex. Does more than the RDA of vitamins help? So see, the thing is, these RDAs have been designed many centuries, not centuries, but many years ago, and they are not accurately representing our actual nutrient needs and right now, right? So now with all the extra toxin exposure that we have, now with all the pathogens that we are exposed to, with the day-to-day stressors that we have, with the changes in our environment, our need for nutrition, our need for good nutrients is much higher. So that's why some of the best supplement companies actually have higher amounts of these vitamins in your capsules, because your body can get the extra that it needs. But you have to be careful with which company and what else is there along with. What are the side effects of being on antidepressants? Physically, weight gain, changes in appetite, changes in the gut microbiome, because even in your gut you have serotonin receptors. So whatever SSRIs you take for the brain are also impacting those SSRIs in your gut. And then it can actually start causing hormonal imbalances. It can impact skin, so people start getting acne, dry skin, all of that starts happening. And generally in terms of mood, antidepressants don't really cure depression, right? So you're just trying to put in chemicals to kind of change some way of how you're feeling. So it's just something that sometimes makes you numb. That's what antidepressants did for me. They just made me so numb, and I would use food to kind of feel something. I would just eat. Could you share an effective nervous system regulating exercise, please? Breath work, right? Like you could just do, this is the easiest. You could sit cross-legged on the ground or on your bed and just breathe in with 4 counts. So you breathe in with 4 counts. You hold your breath inside for 4 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4 counts. So, and after exhaling, hold that like no breath inside your body kind of state for 8 counts. Okay, so 4, 4, 4 and 8. When you breathe like that, right, you're basically breathing slowly, because under stress, most of us breathe very fast. Like we're breathing fast, you have to run somewhere, you have to get out of somewhere. When you intentionally start breathing slowly like that, it tells your nervous system that, okay, chill, calm down. Here is an opportunity for us to just relax, because look, we're breathing slowly, right? So we don't have to run anywhere. So it's a very simple exercise. You can do like about 4 or 5 rounds of this. Won't take you more than 5 minutes, but it will generate a huge sense of calm and peace as soon as you finish doing it. Does depression lead to bipolar? I don't know the answer to that question, Anu, because depression is a different state of consciousness. Bipolar is a different state. Could one lead to the other? There's a huge possibility, but I don't have enough research that I have done myself. Maybe there is enough research out there in the world, but I can do this another time. How long antidepressants to be taken? I am not a doctor. I'm a nutritionist. So I can't give prescriptive answers about medications. But my advice always is that we shouldn't really be taking any medicines at all, right? So how long should you take them? The answer is not like, oh, these many months. The answer is, why are you taking them? Why can't you find a way to fix that depression without having to be dependent on medicines? How to convince young adults to do something to come out of, like I said earlier to the person who had asked the same question, you can't convince someone. The more you push someone to fix an issue, the more they are going to rebel. Especially the younger ones are going to rebel big time the more you push. How to build sleep hygiene, I think we'll do a separate class on sleep, because I can't cover that now. Also, it's 9. Can melatonin, so there are 2-3 questions on sleep. We'll answer those in another webinar that we do. For those of our friends and relatives who need this informative webinar, can we share the recording to them even though they did not join here? You can just send us an email and we'll reply to that on email. I also don't know the modality of that, okay? So you can let us know. What are the alternatives to seafood or meat-based and short options for vegetarians? Unfortunately, there are no real comparators to animal-based food when it comes to protein. What we do for our clients and our patients, if they are absolute vegetarians or vegans for whatever religious, ethical reasons, then we start supplementing with amino acids, because there's no way these amino acids are even found in things like dals and pulses, right? We were, as a company, we were plant-based for 2 entire years and it wasn't solving the problem. So amino acid supplementation is what really helps. And I think that's the end of questions. We're also at like 9 o'clock. Okay, Jayati, that's, I'll see, and I'll speak with Pratishtha also and we'll see what we can do there. Yeah, thank you so much, all of you, for being here, for attending this webinar. When people show up for it, it makes me want to do more of these. So thank you so much. Rest well, sleep well, enjoy your weekend. And when we do the sleep one, since there were so many questions around sleep, we'll keep you posted and you can join in for that one, okay? Have a good day and enjoy your weekend with much love from the entire team at iThrive. who worked really hard to kind of do this kind of setup. Otherwise, until now, we were just doing it with a webcam and laptop. So thank you so much, and for your patience also at the beginning. Okay? All right. Chalo, good night.